Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really important topic. What happens when you stop taking antidepressants? We're going to walk through the whole process, what to expect and what can help, all based on some great information compiled by Methyl-Life. So if you're thinking about stopping an antidepressant, or maybe you're supporting someone who is, you're in the right place. It's a really big decision, and honestly, understanding what you might be in for is absolutely the most critical first step. First things first, let's get our terms straight. The official name for this whole experience is Antidepressant Discontinuation Syndrome, or ADS for short. It's just the clinical way of describing the withdrawal symptoms that can show up when you stop these medications. Okay? So what is actually happening in your body and brain to cause this? It's really important to know that antidepressants aren't addictive like some other drugs, but your body can get used to them. It develops a physical dependency. That just means it's adapted to having the medication around and needs some time to adjust when it's gone. Now, while researchers are still figuring out the exact mechanics, there are two main theories. The first and most common one is that there's a sudden drop in that key neurotransmitter serotonin. The other idea is that it's simply the body's natural stress response kicking in because of that big chemical change. And here's something that might surprise you. You might think this only happens to people who've been on medication for years and years, but that's not the case. You can actually become susceptible to these symptoms after taking a medication for as little as 1 month. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the symptoms. What does this actually feel like? Well, it can be really different for everyone, but there are some definite common threads. The range of symptoms can be, well, pretty broad. It can affect you both mentally and physically as your whole system tries to recalibrate. And these can pop up with almost any kind of antidepressant, usually starting about 1 to 3 days after you take your last dose. So let's look at some of the common ones. You've got things like anxiety, feeling agitated, nausea, and then you have these general flu-like symptoms. And that's what makes it so tricky, right? It's really easy to just think you're coming down with something and not connect it to the medication change. And then there are the neurological symptoms, which can be particularly weird and disorienting. Things like dizziness and trouble concentrating are common, but a lot of people also report this very strange and specific sensation of a brief electric shock in their head, which are often called brain zaps. Now, here's a super important point. Not all antidepressants carry the same risk. A lot of it comes down to something called a drug's half-life, which is just how long it takes for half of it to clear out of your system. So drugs like Paxil and Effexor have a short half-life, meaning they leave your body quickly, creating a sudden drop. On the other hand, something like Prozac has a really long half-life, which basically acts like its own built-in taper, giving your brain much more time to adapt. Okay, so that's the what. Now, for the really crucial part, how can you manage this whole process safely? The good news is there are several proven strategies to make this a whole lot smoother. The number one golden rule is to never stop cold turkey. The standard medical advice is to taper off, which just means working with your doctor to slowly lower your dose over several weeks or even months. Sometimes they might suggest other things like switching you to a longer-acting drug to ease the transition, or making sure you have therapeutic support like CBT to handle the psychological side of things. So beyond that medical plan, there are other things that can help support your body during this change. Let's talk about a few supplements that might provide some of the nutritional building blocks your brain is craving right now. First up is something called Methylfolate. Now, this is not your average folic acid. It's the active form of vitamin B9, and it's a major player when it comes to producing those brain chemicals that regulate your mood. This might look a little sciencey, but it's actually pretty cool. Think of it like a set of dominoes. Methylfolate kicks off this chemical chain reaction. And what's at the end of that chain reaction? The production of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, the very neurotransmitters your brain is trying to get back in balance. Next up on the list is good old vitamin B12. This is another one that's just essential for your neurological health, and it's deeply connected to your mood and how your brain functions. I mean, just look at how much B12 does. It's directly involved in making serotonin. That's why a serious B12 deficiency can actually cause psychiatric symptoms all by itself. And what's really interesting is that some studies show having enough B12 can even make antidepressants work better in the first place. All right, now for one you probably weren't expecting to see, saffron. And no, we're not just talking about cooking here. This spice has some pretty amazing properties. So how does it work? Well, saffron seems to boost the activity of something called GABA in your brain. You can think of GABA as your brain's natural brake pedal. It's the main chemical that helps calm things down. It's pretty incredible. Some studies have even found saffron to be as effective as certain prescription drugs for mild to moderate depression. All right, let's wrap this all up by tackling a couple of the most common questions people have when they're thinking about this process. This is the big one, isn't it? It's the question on everyone's mind. The uncertainty of not knowing how long this will take can be one of the toughest parts of the journey. For most people, the good news is that the really acute symptoms are usually pretty mild and clear up within a week or two. But, and this is a really big but, that's not a guarantee. Everybody's body chemistry is unique, and in some rare cases, symptoms can stick around for much longer. Okay, if you take only one single thing away from this explainer today, please let it be this. It is never ever a good idea to stop an antidepressant on your own. This is a process that absolutely must be managed with a doctor or psychiatrist. They are the only ones who can create a safe, gradual plan that's made just for you. You know, when we look at all this, we see this incredible link between medication, our brain's chemistry, and even simple nutrition. It all leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. As we learn more and more about how specific nutrients can support our brains, what could that mean for the future of how we approach mental wellness? Thanks for joining us for The Explainer.